After the event, Angel and his family complained of what could only be described as paranormal activity going on in his house. He had an instance where a crucifix was floating off of his wall and for seconds, several seconds, and then fell to the ground. There was another instance where a Bible pages were turning all by themselves and then just went limp. You know, it's very important to know that these people were affected by this, I think traumatized by this. I think that's part of the reason why they went dark.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Scott Roeder. Hey, man, how's it been?
Good, Sean. How are you? It's been a minute.
Yeah, I actually, last week I was spent in New York, which I know a lot of people love that city. Not for me, but it was like a work trip. So I'm very happy to be back in California.
Nice. I'm coming to you from the tropical and freezing Cleveland, Ohio, the greatest location in the nation under the asphalt gray skies that we call our home. And it's a beautiful place to be. Although February, I'd rather be in California.
I don't mind the cold too much. I actually like snow when I can get it. Right now, the skies are asphalt gray here too, by the way. So it is what it is. Okay. So you mentioned before we got on air that there have been some updates to the Vegas case. And by the way, we didn't even we talked about a bunch of other random stuff before that.
I know. Yeah.
But, you're probably like, I'm talking to a crazy person, but I don't, I'll mention those things in passing on this show, but I never focus on them. So it helps put some things into context, I think, by talking about them. Anyway, what's transpired since we last talked?
So much. I mean, I just kind of completed a bit of a mini world tour on getting the word out on the April 30th, May 1st, 2023 Backyard Las Vegas alien encounter case. We filmed a television segment for a program in Tokyo, Japan called Incredible, which is the longest running primetime television show in Japan. It's kind of like a mixture of In Search Of and, America's Weird Videos kind of a show. An interesting format where they film it in the can and then they play it for a live studio audience with like 3 television presenters, and then they react to it. And it was all about the Vegas case, a full hour about that show, and it got great reviews. Everybody was incredibly supportive as to how believable and authentic the evidence is. So it was exciting and an honor to do that over in Tokyo. I was in Australia doing other work on my crime scene business, my homicide investigation business, and we did some sit-down interviews for print media there about the Vegas case. And then I most recently just got back from Hollywood, California, where I filmed episode 1, season 18 of Ancient Aliens for the History Channel.
Did you get to meet Giorgio?
No, he wasn't at the office that day, but because of the fires and so forth, we actually filmed at a house in Chatsworth, which is kind of bizarre. We didn't get to film it in a studio, but yeah, I sat down for a 2-hour interview. I got to give special thanks out to Marianne Wagner, who's the head of Prometheus Productions, who does the filming for Ancient Aliens. So we sat down for 2 hours. And I tell you what, I've got to really hand it to them. They asked me some terrific questions. They have a perspective that they're bringing this case to the people with. And it's an episode called Aliens in Our Midst, right? And this is going to be Act 1, Episode 1, Season 18. And the only, I think, disadvantage that we had was the History Channel wasn't able to license the rights to use the cell phone footage on the Ancient Aliens episode. They have a different rule because it's not news. They really don't fall under fair use, like podcasting and news stations. Like we can use it without having to worry about it because it's in the public domain. But because they're a for-profit, not technically news program, entertainment program, they need to license everything that they put on air. And they weren't able to license it. So we had to do the show without that. But nonetheless, asked some great questions, and I think that we were able to, give a good rendition of, one, why the Vegas case is unique, why it's, I think, in my opinion, real, and what the effects of this case are moving forward as part of the disclosure movement and as part of just trying to bring real cases with real evidence brought to you by real people for, public consideration. And I think they did a good job with that. So I'm excited. It comes out in April, and we're pretty pumped up. Hopefully it'll turn out great.
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Bain Books at bain.com.
And what specifically did they talk to you about? Was it only the Vegas case, or did they talk to you about other stuff?
It was only the Vegas case. Because I'm a crime scene reconstruction expert, that's the angle that they took. And one of the first questions that they asked me, which I kind of turned it around on them, they said, why should we not think that Angel is a liar? And I thought about that. And as a crime scene investigator, and when you think about it from the perspective of law enforcement, whenever a victim makes a complaint to law enforcement, you don't say these people are automatically lying, right? You have to assume that the person complaining of being violated has some credibility. Otherwise, you would never solve any crime. You would never catch any bad guys. So I said to her, we must assume some benefit of the doubt, some credibility for the person complaining of being violated. And then you investigate it that way, right? So like, for example, we do all kinds of homicide investigations where it's been ruled a suicide, but really later it was a homicide. And when you walk into a crime scene and you just assume it's a suicide, you have nowhere to go with your investigation. But if you assume it's a homicide, you can always, the evidence could lead you to know it's not a homicide, it was a suicide. But you can't go backwards. And same thing when you have somebody who's complaining of being offended, you can't just assume that their complaint has no foundation. You must investigate it as if it does have foundation. And then if it's found to be not credible, then, you spare no quarter in investigating it from that standpoint. So I originally got onto this case because everybody was calling this kid a liar, a hoaxer, dragging their family's name through the mud when they were just sharing something amazing that happened to them that they captured, and that by no coordination of their own met all of the standards of evidence. I believe that we have enough evidence to win this case in court, to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt to a legal standard that this family was telling the truth, that they experienced what they said they experienced, and that we've been able to use our forensic techniques, systems, and processes, personal experience, to bring that evidence into the forefront and do it in a chronological, systematic way that really cannot be debunked. So I think that was an interesting way that they approached it. Why should we not believe that this kid's a liar? And I think you just have to turn that around. We should assume people are telling the truth. I'm not that cynical that I think everybody should be assumed a liar until proven truthful. I think everybody should be given the benefit of the doubt until proven not truthful. That's my opinion.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
Have there been any updates to that case? I mean, we're almost on 2 years. Have the police come to a conclusion? Has the family, I mean, I haven't really seen the family out talking about this. They've seemed to have kind of gone dark, which is also to support your argument. If this was something that they were trying to do to get attention, they're not exactly capitalizing on it right now.
No, not at all. I mean, matter of fact, they had an opportunity to make a substantial amount of money participating with the History Channel and appearing on HBO. They turned that down. I've spoke with Angel a couple of times on the phone, and he expressed to me he appreciates what I've done in the case, but he doesn't want to go on camera. These are spiritual people. These are Christian people. Angel believes that, and if you look at the lore of ufology and alien, contact, these things come with high strangeness, right? And sometimes you have what's known as the hitchhiker effect, right? And after the event, Angel and his family complained of what could only be described as paranormal activity going on in his house. He had an instance where a crucifix was floating off of his wall and for seconds, several seconds, and then fell to the ground. There was another instance where a Bible pages were turning all by themselves and then just went limp. It's very important to know that these people were affected by this, I think traumatized by this. I think that's part of the reason why they went dark and aren't, looking for any kind of limelight. So, I want to respect that. But at the same time, I think it's too important of an event to just forget about, because this case is so unique because we have chain of custody of the evidence. We have multiple uninterested parties that all overlap each other and confirm other people's accounts. So the police, self-driving cars, cell phone footage, ring camera footage, reports from the Astronomical Society of things going on in the sky, the video footage that were able to get off of their post on Reddit only 7 days after the incident happened. There was no time to do any kind of manipulation to it. We ran it through our software, used all of our techniques, put it out for peer review. To this day, it is unchallenged. And it's been confirmed by several sources, not just myself, but several other forensic science sources, that it is an authentic video and it's untouched, unmanipulated in any way. It is unchallenged. So we know it's real. And we know it fits perfectly in the context of all of the other events leading up to it. If it was just the cell phone footage, I would say, okay, maybe it's not enough. But we have a green-blue light flashing low in the sky, and it makes a mechanical oscillating sound that we can confirm from several ring cameras. I've done research on shooting stars. None of them make a mechanical oscillating sound. None of them come this angle into the ground. We've got multiple angles putting the coordination in the backyard. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming, not just of what people saw and documented, but what credible people like police officers felt when they were in the backyard. The cops were scared. At one point, the cops looked at Angel and they said, hey, if these 10-foot beings come back, handle it yourself. We don't want anything to do with it. The cops were shook as part of this case. So I think this case continues to be the most credible instance that I just happened to stumble across and use my abilities to, kind of bring it to light. But, the footage is out there. Anybody can look at it. Anybody can find what I found and find it for yourself. I mean, that's a challenge. It's an open source grassroots investigation that anybody can duplicate what we've done.
Have you asked Mick West to look at this?
Matter of fact, I have, and I'm now calling him Big M Little C West, kind of like the McChicken sandwich, because Mick West, him and I went back and forth on X, and I actually challenged him. I said, Mick, I will give you $5,000 of my own money if you can debunk my case. And he said, this is the most insignificant case. I'm not going to waste my time. So I started direct messaging him. I'm like, Mick, I'm serious. Here's the rules. Okay, I issued a 17-page report. I sent you a copy of it. I said, if you can go through and debunk any of these issues that I've issued in my report, I'll give you the money. but I need you to do it publicly and do it in a written report like I've done it. I don't want you to just say, oh, it's a shadow and where's my money? Because we know how shadows work, right? You need a light source, you need an object, and you need a surface. I've never seen a situation where a shadow just floats above a fence, and then he's like, well, maybe it's a coyote. Okay, maybe it's a raccoon standing on a coyote's back. So, the third grade type criticisms that I'm getting from guys like Mick West and Michael Shermer and these other people that make a living off of living in their extraordinarily boring world that they live in, so like I said, unchallenged, undefeated when it comes to this case. And he doesn't want to go, mano a mano with me because he knows he'd get his butt kicked.
It would be an interesting episode, like an interesting Joe Rogan episode where you two appeared and talked about this. Just throwing that out there.
Well, it's interesting because I was on Surviving the Survivor. Good friend of mine, Joe Walderman, his show, and it's a true crime show, which I've appeared on many times because I'm a true crime expert, because I do true crime in real life, right? And he actually came up with an idea. Why don't we have a trial? I could present the evidence on the pro side. Mick West can present evidence on the no side, and let's let the jury decide. Let the people decide. And if you look at the comments from that hour and a half episode, the jury's clearly in. They believe me, but no, I think that'd be a great episode on Joe Rogan, me versus, I don't know, you can put in Neil deGrasse Tyson on the other side if you want. I don't care, because
I don't know. It would be very difficult to keep one's cool with that guy. I mean, he's so insufferable that.
Air hug. Yeah, actually, I did an episode on my podcast, Crime Scene Time Machine, called Not Everybody Knows Everything. And it was about Neil deGrasse Tyson's kind of pompous attitude on the UFO phenomenon. And he actually does this really dismissive kind of straw man technique where he's like, listen, people see a light in the sky and they say aliens. And he's like, I don't want to spend my time doing that because I'm too busy measuring moons.
Okay. Yeah, you're not saying what they are. You're just saying they're 10-foot beings. You don't know where they're from. You don't know they could be from space. They could be from another dimension. They could be angels, demons. Who knows, right? You're not making
Antarctica, volcanoes.
Yeah, you're not making claim as to what they are. It's just that there were these beings of this particular height that were kind of semi-cloaked behind this guy's fence. So is there anything else that Angel has said? Like, has he been approached or intimidated by people on our side or not to talk?
There's some rumblings that some very well-known, I wouldn't call them experts, but I would call them personalities in the UFO world are kind of reaching out to him and maybe spoiling that a little bit. It's unfortunate, but we'll see what happens. What I know right now is that, from how I understand it, Angel and his family are not willing to make any further public statements. They want their privacy. They've turned down money. They've turned down TV opportunities. They've turned down interviews. And I think they're authentic in that they have a genuine post-traumatic stress over what happened. And, I guess I would have to ask your audience if, you're in your backyard on a normal night and you're just working on a truck and a UFO lands in your backyard and now you're face to face with 8 to 10 foot tall beings and you're paralyzed. Angel explained at one point that it was like sleep paralysis. And I just recently released on my show an extended 8-minute, the 911 call, which is actually 8 minutes long, where you hear the father come on the 911 call. And he says, when he was in the backyard, well, one, Angel said when the UFO crashed, you could feel the impact into the ground, and then it immediately went invisible. And then he was face to face with these beings, and he was like sleep paralysis. And I think that's consistent with other reports that I've heard, is when they look at you, somehow they're able to hypnotize you into paralysis. And it was at that moment that this kid, Angel, said, Jesus Christ. And that broke the spell that this alien had, or whatever this being had, on him. And that was able to give him and his brother enough wiggle room to get out of there, go inside, get his parents, arm themselves with guns, and then come back out. And this is all before the 911 call. The 911 call happens after the video footage that we have, right? And then the father's on the 911 call saying he saw the beings too, right? Because we see that in the footage. But then the father says he felt a strange energy in the yard. And this was when it was being cloaked. And now mind you, I've been working on this for over 14 months now. And I even issued a report in October of last year. And I thought it was case closed. Mm-hmm. But just a couple of days ago, I'm going through the footage again. And it's a part after they go back into the gate the second time. And they kind of train that camera on the forklift and the truck that's in the background. And I can clearly see up to 4 to 5 new beings that I had not seen before. And it's not pareidolia, because we know the video is real. We know there's other entities in there, but these don't look like anything I've seen previously as part of our investigation. These are new beings in the case. And then I go back to the record. What did Angel say? He said, after the thing landed, he felt the impact, it goes invisible. And then he said he heard footsteps going in all directions. And that's when he comes face to face with these two beings. That doesn't mean there were only just two beings. Those were the two beings that confronted him and that paralyzed him. So, as I said in the last line of my expert report, we've determined that this is a real event. And I don't think there's any doubt about that, but it still begs more investigation from people. Listen, I'm the mechanic of the crime scene world, okay? I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. I do bullet trajectory, blood spatter, video analysis, and crime scene reconstruction. I'm a basic mechanic of the crime scene world. I'm not going to overstate my abilities, right? But there are people in the world of physics, and I think even spirituality and environmental sciences that can lend more insight into what we are actually seeing here. I can say we're seeing something, and I can tell you what I think they look like, and I can show you where they are in the video, but I can't tell you where they're from, why are they here, or what do they want. And I think we need to go on to those kinds of questions. Well, where are they from? Why are they here? And what do they want? And I think most importantly, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but I think it's an important point. If this is a technological craft, what's it running on? And is that the grand prize that everybody's hiding? Is that why we have so much secrecy around the UFO file? Is it the propulsion? They're clearly not running on gasoline. Okay. So is Ashton Forbes right in that there is this secret technology that we know about that we don't want to let out there? Is that the big thing? Because I don't want to go off on a tangent, but a couple of years ago, I did an episode called The Electric Universe, where I talk about Nikola Tesla's wireless electric invention, right? And how the world would look different today if we weren't running it on a mirror. We would be truly free. We wouldn't have to work all day just to pay the bills. We could work to kind of pay the bills of our experience of life, to have more experience in life, to be more of the true what humanity is supposed to be, which is explorers, musicians, lovers, and educators. Because I think that's what people really are meant to be in this world, not tied to a desk or some job you don't like because you got to pay the light bill, because you need gas for your car. So I think that the secrecy beyond the subject goes far beyond the ontological shock of us not being the smartest kids in the cosmic universe, but it goes more to the issue of, do we have any freedom and mobility in the cosmic universe, or are we kind of in this, open air prison planet destined to toil for meager wages just to, have clean air and clean water? So it's a big issue, but I think the UFO phenomenon kind of forces you to look at those huge issues that I think a lot of people just don't have the time to sit down and digest.
Yeah, because they're toiling needlessly, probably doing stuff that they don't want to be doing, and they're just trying to get relief from a hard day's work, and collapse in front of a hypnotic machine,
Right? Yeah.
and
Or
then
my
fall
favorite
asleep.
sports team and all that. Listen, I got one vice left in the terrestrial world. I love baseball still. I played baseball for 30 years. Matter of fact, I'm trying to get back into shape to give one more season as a baseball player. Now that I'm a grandfather times two, I got 2 grandchildren. I want to play a couple more seasons before the body breaks down. And you have to enjoy some things on this world. We can't just be so cynical to get outside of our bodies. We're here. We're in the world. We got to enjoy it. Baseball is one of the last things I enjoy, but I do agree with you. It's easy after a long day of work to just pop on the tube and just accept whatever programming is being curated for your attention.
Yeah, agreed. In this Vegas story, again, just going back.
Sure.
Have you talked to any of the police that were on scene more recently in terms of is the case closed? Did they just come up with some conclusion, some BS conclusion just to close it? Or is it still an open case? How are they looking at this?
I did inquire with the Las Vegas Police Department, just generally speaking, at their desk. I didn't talk to anybody specifically involved in the case that responded to the scene. But they indicate that it is not being investigated, but it is being considered a legitimate phone call. Because if it was considered to be a phony phone call or a malicious call, or
Angel would have been arrested, right?
Yeah, that's a felony. That's like pulling a fire alarm in a hospital. Because there were up to 3 police officers that dedicated their time to investigate that case. You go to jail if you're playing a prank on the police. So I don't think that the police are investigating it anymore. However, I think that they certainly believe that it was a legitimate call. They acted and reacted and investigated it as a legitimate phone call. As a matter of fact, the police were witnesses in part on the case as well, both with catching the UFO coming down on their body camera, as well as other officers saying that they saw it fall out of the sky. And then, of course, the reaction of the officers after they went into the backyard, clearly being shook about this kind of thing. So, of course, you're probably going to have the FBI and other agencies getting involved to limit any further information coming out. But I do have a date with the Las Vegas FBI office, field office, to give them a presentation. I called them, I spoke with them, identified myself. I, told them what I've done. And I said, I'd like to come in and I'd like to share my evidence with you. And I would like somebody from your office to give me a public statement on your reaction to what I found. And they said, we'd be happy to hear your presentation, be happy to give you a comment if we can. I don't have a whole lot of expectations other than hopefully to be met with some professional courtesy. But the guy I talked with at the FBI desk in Las Vegas is aware. I specifically said, I was like, are you aware of the UFO alien encounter of the, Kenmore family on April 30th, May 1st, 2023? And he said, yes, I am aware of that case. So they are identifying it as a UFO alien encounter. That's how they're recognizing this case.
Has there been any subsequent interest from media on this stuff, aside from Ancient Aliens, History Channel?
I mean, News Nation did a piece where we got, a little bit of thing on it. But I think the UFO disclosure community at large is really busy with the curated material that seems to be put out there for our
distraction.
Yeah. And listen, I have good friends, like Ross Coulthard is a good friend of mine. I go back all the way to the Oscar Pistorius case with him that I did in Africa almost 10 years ago now. which is where I met him, and him and I have been friends ever since. And obviously, he's one of the leaders of the journalistic bringing out these whistleblowers and stuff. And I give him all the credit. But I'm not going to tell any lies, man. I mean, I've asked him maybe 24 times. I'm like, Ross, the Las Vegas case, why don't you cover it? Have me on the show. And I'm not getting any responses. And like I say, he's a friend of mine. What can I say? I don't know why people are scared of this case. I think if you take the time to look at the evidence, clearly we're bringing a lot of evidence to the table. I'm bringing my 27 years, 2,000 cases. I've testified over 75 times in court on murder cases. Matter of fact, just last year, I testified on a case. Christopher Dunn in Missouri was in jail for 33 years. I testified on his post-conviction release. He was found not guilty and was sent home based on my testimony. So we are still actively engaged on serious cases. And I'm taking the time and using my skills to bring attention to this case. And the fact that, you got these people talking about these things that are kind of spectacular in this curated whistleblower kind of movement, flap or whatever you want to call it. And yet this case has so much verifiable evidence being backed up by an evidence expert from a grassroots community. And it's being kind of ignored by people who say that they're into, I'm not trying to pile on Ross. Maybe he works for News Nation. He's not an independent guy. He's got to follow the stories that News Nation tells him to do, right? That's like if you're Walter, Cronkite, right? You're going to do what CBS tells you to do, right? I'm an independent guy. I can cover what.
The question is who's telling News Nation what to do?
Well, you look at the ownership of that company, and they are owned by the same conglomerate, clear channel type media empire that everybody else is owned by. So, and we all know from Operation Mockingbird that those places are infiltrated with the powers that be, and they have been since the end of World War II.
I'm actually curious now.
Yeah, I looked it up. I don't exactly know, but I know it's a big, it's not a small independent startup news agency. Let's put it that way.
I'll tell you the answer, at least according to ChatGPT.
Yeah, let me see.
So News Nation is owned by Nexstar Media Group, the largest owner of television stations in the United States. Nexstar, headquartered in Irving, Texas, acquired the cable news channel when it took full ownership of WGN America in 2020 and rebranded it as News Nation.
Oh, WGN is okay, that was the infrastructure they inherited. Okay. So yeah, Nexstar, they're huge.
My next question is,
how many shares of Nexstar does Christopher Mellon own?
No, so here's what I'll tell you in a second. So I'm asking ChatGPT who's on the board of directors.
Ooh.
Interesting. Okay, so yes, one member of Nexstar Media Group's board of directors has military experience. So Thomas McMillan is the guy. So Mr. McMillan served 3 consecutive terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Maryland's 4th congressional district from 1987 to 1993. Prior to his political career, he was a professional basketball player and a Rhodes Scholar. While his biography does not indicate direct military intelligence service, his tenure in Congress and subsequent roles have provided him with experience related to national security and public policy. It just says the other board members' biographies do not indicate any military or intelligence experience.
Well, just the fact that he was a
Rhodes Scholar.
A congressman.
The Rhodes Scholar thing.
Baltimore. I mean, that's the Beltway right there. I mean, that's where that district is all intelligence, right?
Yeah, and he's also a Rhodes Scholar, which would... Yeah. I'm trying to think of... I personally know, off the top of my head, 3 Rhodes Scholars, okay? Mm-hmm. One of them is like in the finance world, has nothing to do with any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The other two, one of them became Obama's Secretary of Defense. By the way, he passed last year, so that's Ash Carter.
Oh.
The second one I worked for when I was in the Army, and he recently left Department of Homeland Security. He was number 2 at Department of Homeland Security. And he, within the past 2 weeks, joined the board of SAIC. So, Rhodes Scholars usually, I mean, that's the whole point, right? The Cecil B. Rhodes, like connecting former colonies of the British Empire together. And anyway, I'm just throwing that out
that's
there.
kind of like that Council on Global Economic Growth and all those organizations that
The World Economic Forum and the Council on Foreign
Relations and all that stuff,
yeah.
and Davos. I think all of those corporate interests. George Carlin, said it the best. Where he's like, they don't need to have, although they do have official meetings, they don't need to have official meetings to know where their interests line up, And so, that's who is running the agenda over at News Nation. And I guess we'll let that speak for itself. But that leaves no excuse for other folks in the disclosure movement that I think should have a genuine interest in this case. But listen, I'm not trying to cry victim, because I think we've done a lot of good work with shows like yours and Stephen Diener and the STS and ET Reality and my show and the History Channel. It's a big deal doing the History Channel. So I'm not complaining.
By the way, it's funny you mentioned that name, Stephen Diener. He got a shout out from Jason Sands on the Rogan show.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Taking this interview all over the place. My apologies.
Fine, whatever. Good.
Yeah, I wonder why that name keeps coming up.
Well, Stephen Diener runs the UAP 850 podcast, which I've been on a number of times. It's a great show. He's real balls and strikes down the middle. I feel like he's a really good, impartial journalist. And he'll have on people that he doesn't agree with. He has on people that he doesn't like. Like he'll tell me behind the scenes, I interviewed this guy, I don't like him, but he's newsworthy, and he treats everybody fairly, and he's a good guy. He's a real fair broadcaster, but I think he's a true broadcaster. Like he's a true journalist. Yeah.
So is he like I know he has a podcast, but is it on like a radio show, or is it? That's the kind of sense that I got with him.
Yeah, he has a podcast, but he also does a live radio show as well. I think he originally is a radio guy who got into podcasting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I didn't mean to derail us there. I was just curious.
It's weird. I don't know why Jason Sands give him a shout out. Maybe I think Jason Sands was probably on his show. My guess would be.
No, he definitely was. But when I notice synchronicities like that, I just call them out. Like there's usually some significance to it. I just don't know what it is yet, but there's something probably significant. So just log that into the file, and if something happens subsequently, you'll know why.
Well, I mean, I like to give shout outs and praise to people that I have respect for in the field. And I have no problem, criticizing people even that I'm friends with. And also I have no problem, giving praise and promoting other people's channels and things, because we are part of a community. And I feel like the people who are interested in the phenomenon, not just of the UFO phenomenon, but the phenomenon of life, which includes the UFO phenomenon, which includes the military industrial complex. It includes what we eat, what we watch, how we raise our children. It includes all of these things. None of these things are an island of themselves. They're all interrelated and overlap in subtle ways, and maybe sometimes not so subtle ways. But yeah, giving a shout out to guys like Steve and Jim Quirk. These are people that I think have a high level of integrity and are unique individual people that are independent. And that's what I love.
Yeah, I've interacted a little bit with Steven on Twitter. He's been great. He's been nothing but positive. And then Quirk, I don't think I've interacted with much, but I enjoy his style. It's very, when you said right down the middle, it's like right down the middle with the sledgehammer.
Exactly. I call him the Bulldog, Jim the Bulldog Quirk, because he gets on and actually he's the one that got me involved on the Las Vegas alien case to begin with, because I wasn't investigating UFOs ever at all. Wasn't on my radar. I mean, I was a consumer of the subject matter, but it wasn't on my radar I started my channel, Crime Scene Time Machine, as the name tells you, because I was really good friends with Dr. Cyril Weck, who passed away last year at age 94 years old, a forensic pathologist, medical examiner for Pittsburgh area, also Navy doctor who was stationed in Dallas, Texas at the Parkland Medical Hospital. At the time, Kennedy was brought there after the assassination.
Which all that stuff's been declassified. Well, it hasn't come out yet. It'll take take a minute, but
yeah.
That's going to be strange. Yeah.
And I interviewed him 3 times just on John F. Kennedy. I interviewed him 1 time on Robert Kennedy. And he was an inspiration to me, being one of the most sought after experts in our field, in the legal consulting field, a good friend of mine. And, I was all about John F. Kennedy assassination and attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan and all that stuff. Yeah. Crime scene stuff, Matter of fact, I'm going to do a deep dive into the Matthew Thomas Crooks attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
Who they incinerated like 10 days after the case. Very strange.
Yeah, who had no silverware at his house. He had no social media profile. Then there was no evidence of him ever living there. It's really bizarre. There were doppelgangers in the crowd that day. Inexplicably, he's allowed to climb up with a rifle on top of a roof in front of all. Listen, that was a Secret Service stand down order by the contiguency of government department. Just like they ordered the Secret Service off of the back of the limousine on John F. Kennedy's limo on that day in Dallas, Texas. They ordered a Secret Service stand down, and they ordered a Secret Service stand down on Trump that day as well. They let him get up on that roof. They let him take that shot. And it was really just luck that Trump didn't get murdered, because if he did get killed, we would have President Kamala Harris right now. And I'm not a political person. I don't
think we would have a president right now.
Yeah, well, you're right. We'd probably have the North American commander, because COG is probably the most dirty secret word in all of government. COG. That's
continuity of government, right?
Yeah, continuity of government is when there is an emergency event. Could be anything: alien invasion, another 9/11. COG could be, and then there would be a North American commander. We wouldn't have a president of the United States. We'd have a North American commander. And then there would be governors appointed to regional commanders. And you wouldn't even have a democracy anymore. We would be under martial law. And that's scary. That's not constitutional. That's extra constitutional. That wasn't even a thing until after 9/11. This is part of I think a dangerous vein in American politics, is that, I don't think anybody out there, I mean, except for people like you and smart people listening to your show, how many people out there in the regular public even know what COG is or what its role is in American government?
Well, even independent of that, there are things that happen in government that are completely and utterly unconstitutional because it's run by people. I'll give you an example. So I recently did 3 interviews with Thomas Drake. Do you know who he is?
I do not.
He's like Snowden, only he did everything the proper way.
Okay.
Like he didn't, I'm not checking my identity, every month because of him. I'm doing it because of Snowden, right? Because Snowden basically cooperated with our enemies. But this guy did everything the right way. But he was a high-level NSA employee who literally within 2 weeks after 9/11, Cheney's lawyer had an order to collect on all internet usage within the United States. Completely unconstitutional. When he would raise hey, shouldn't we have Congress greenlight this? And I think the president's general counsel said something to the effect of, well, we can't do that because if we went to Congress, they wouldn't let us do this. Right. It's like, well, yeah, that's the point. This is unconstitutional. So, of course, they went after him. I appreciate your bravery with kind of going to the FBI, but I wouldn't speak to them without a lawyer, because they have this nasty little form called 302 form. If the guy taking your statement makes a mistake, and then they re-interview you in the future and you repeat your story verbatim, that's a felony for you.
Well, how would that be a felony for me if that guy?
Because if the guy made the mistake, you would have to prove that he made the mistake and that you didn't lie to the FBI.
Right. Well,
right. I think that's how they got Martha Stewart.
I should definitely record myself giving the presentation. That
they will. You should absolutely do that, but they probably. And you got to make sure make sure it's a two-party a one-party or two-party consent state. Yeah. And if you ask them for permission, they probably won't give it to you.
Right.
So because he made that mistake, he was a patriot, and he spoke to them, and they brought 10 felony charges against him. Oh. 4 of which were related to making false statements to the FBI.
Wow. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm trying to get their statement, I know.
Just take care of yourself. Just take care of yourself.
When I originally called them, Sean, and they kept saying, well, we can't give you any information. I'm like, I don't need information from you. I'm trying to give you information so that you can give me a comment, because I've done the work, I've got the evidence, and I want to share my evidence with you for comment. I don't need anything from you other than a comment. And I'm trying to come at it from like a journalistic standpoint. I'm an investigative journalist as far as this case goes, because I'm not investigating a crime. I mean, I don't think that you can arrest ET for trespassing, right? So this isn't a crime per se. So I don't think there's any jurisdictional issues, but it's more of a, investigative journalist standpoint of, what do you think about what happened here, folks? But no, I appreciate, I don't want to be so cynical that
I'm super cynical at this point, because we've been lied to for so long. And if you do something that somebody in power doesn't like, they just turn the machinery of power against you. And at the end of the day, you don't even need to commit a crime. It's just somebody has to not like you or something you're saying. And the process is the point, right? They can bankrupt you on BS charges I'm not saying that they will. I think you'll probably be totally safe.
Yeah. That's why I always, whenever I talk about the FBI, I always followed up with the FBI, the greatest crime fighting organization in the world. Just as trying to butter him up a little bit, because I don't want to be so cynical, because I've worked with the FBI on homicide cases. Matter of fact, I did a case as part of an FBI memorial down in Miami, Florida. It was a case where it was a bank robbery by these 2 real bad dudes that killed 12 FBI agents in one day. As part of this standoff at a bank robbery. It was considered the most deadly day in FBI history. And I put together a full reconstruction of the whole shooting scene.
That wasn't Oklahoma City?
No.
This is even worse, huh?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many FBI agents died in Oklahoma City.
I don't know. I mean, in terms of raw, death, it's probably worse, but I don't know how many of them were FBI agents. There's a lot of children and I mean, this was they're talking about actual agents in the field of duty. But it's part of it. It's actually my reconstruction. I donated as part of the memorial for the fallen FBI agents. So listen, I think on a person by person basis, 100%. Like the rank and file, they're probably good people.
Right. It's the people I went to high school with that are in the FBI.
It's the people at the top that. Yeah. But again, I have friends who worked CIA, stuff like that. They don't. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that. I mean, I like to think that what I'm doing is important, but I think that on a bigger scale, is anything that I'm doing even on the radar of these people? Probably not. I mean, what have we accomplished with the Las Vegas cases?
I'm just thinking long term. Let's say you're too close to something that somebody in power doesn't want you getting close to.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Just be cautious, be careful, be pleasant, be cooperative.
Yeah.
But just watch yourself, because people, actually former veterans, are typically the ones who get jammed up in these situations because they trust authority. Right. So look at the case in New York that, thank God, the Daniel Penny case.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
He trusted the police. He gave a statement, and they fucked him.
Yeah.
So
the jury came back in his favor.
True, but the system like put him through the ringer for what anyway. Well, it's not even
well, no, but that's interesting that you bring that up because the jury system is really the last system in the world that we have as individual people to protect our rights and our freedoms. And, that's the subject of my podcast that I just dropped. Can Luigi Mangione get a fair trial based on the media bias and coverage on his case? Because, listen, some people think this guy is a vigilante superhero and other people think he's a terrorist.
I have mixed feelings. I don't even know if I should say, but
say it. It's your show. You can edit it out.
I'll be very careful about how I word this. I think our system is so corrupt and so far gone that it doesn't matter if you're guilty or innocent. If the system actions against you, you will go bankrupt just to defend yourself. Like, your life is ruined regardless. And I think the system needs to know that there are people out there like this who will seek justice in unconventional ways that I don't condone, I don't encourage, but I mean, this is why you had the mafia, because when the system no longer serves its citizens, power abhors a vacuum. And I can now kind of understand why these systems developed and why they weren't all bad, unfortunately, right?
No,
So anyway, that's what I'll say about Luigi. It was very carefully worded.
Well, I was going to interject there as well. I made 2 documentary films in the past. One was The Legend of Elliot Ness, Cleveland Years, the America's first serial killer investigation, the torso murderer, the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. But the second one I made was in the 1970s, set in the 1970s, called Kaboom, The Battle for Collinwood, the story of Danny Green and the Irish Mafia in Cleveland. And my father, who just passed away last week, was a butcher and also, a bookie. And this is the day of the old bars, where you do and I was alive. I'm old enough to know what the numbers business was. And I'm old enough to know that the garbage business was mafia, that the vending machines were mafia, and that in neighborhoods like Collinwood on the Near East Side of Cleveland, I actually interviewed a guy for the documentary. And I was like, tell me what you know about Danny Green. He's like, he was a little kid at the time. He's like, well, my mother, somebody stole the brand new lawnmower out of our garage. And Danny Green found out about it and found this guy and broke his arms and broke his legs, brought the lawnmower back to my mom, and then had the guy who stole the lawnmower, his kids, mow that woman's lawn for the rest of their life. Because Danny Green was the law in the neighborhood. And although the mafia guys would fight the other mafia guys, no innocent people were ever allowed to be hurt. People in the neighborhood were taken care of. People in that neighborhood were given turkeys for Christmas, gifts on the holidays. Nobody went hungry. Everybody got food. People were taken care of when you were in those neighborhoods. That's at least how the Irish mafia handled the east side of Cleveland. And I'm sure
that's also how the Irish take care of things.
Well,
being half Irish myself, right?
Yep, I'm half Irish, half German.
Brother, you and me both.
Yeah, that's right.
The best combo.
And I appreciate that sentiment, although I don't want on raw, but I think the thing that changed the mafia was drugs, right? When the mafia was just dealing in legitimate businesses like garbage collection and vending machines and whatever, all that kind of stuff. And
then somewhat illegitimate business like protection rackets and this and that.
Right. Yeah, no, that was bogus stuff. But, but when they started dealing in drugs, that's when innocent people started getting hurt. And that's unfortunate. Yeah.
However, they weren't the only ones dealing in drugs.
That's right. Yeah. I mean,
there were kind of 2 nexes that were dealing with drugs, and only one still stands.
That is true. Although I have heard some rumblings of some loosely knit mafia people still operating in the world today. But I think when you think
only the cooperation with the intelligence community.
That's the truth now, right? I mean, because the weave of the government has even gotten into subculture and counterculture, and even if you look at, Sean, the medium that we're talking in right now, independent podcasting, where I know I'm independent, I know you're independent.
Not everybody is, though.
Not everybody is, and
there are always signs. There are always signs.
You know what I know what one of the signs are is when multiple stations at the same time carry the same exact story over and over. They all bite on the curated content because that's what they're told to bite on.
Yep. And also they grow faster. They grow much faster. That's the sign.
Yeah.
Because the government has ways of, hey, YouTube, let's give this guy a little bit of a boost. We like his content. Just, or hey, YouTube, there's a name of a guy mentioned on this podcast, so we don't want people to see. So just de-emphasize that one a little bit. That actually happened to Danny Jones with a Chris Bledsoe.
Oh, episode. I love Danny Jones' show. I think he's a great interview.
I've spoken to him a few times because sometimes I'll have a guest that he wants to interview, so he'll do like a pre-interview with me, just whenever that happens. It doesn't happen often, maybe happen 2 or 3 times. Yeah. But, he'll just call me, ask questions about somebody, and I'll give him my perspective. Pros, cons, straight down the middle, try to be as objective as possible. But he definitely does his homework. Yeah. He's a really good dude. I really like him.
He did a great interview of Whitley Strieber. When he did a sit down with Whitley Strieber, I'd never seen somebody ask such great questions. He brings the best out on guests. And I think he has a genuine kind of childlike fascination and curiosity that he brings to the table. And he's not afraid to lay on the table and have
and he takes some shots too. He takes some shots. He gets beat up sometimes too. You see, I mean, he's very good natured about it, but you just see the Jack Sarfati interview.
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't seen the interview, but I know Jack Sarfati's he's a character. He's the one that
I enjoy his company.
Talking to him from the future and stuff, right?
Yeah. I enjoy him, but he is definitely an acquired taste. If you do not have thick skin, you are not going to be able to handle him. But I like him a lot. But I appreciate I grew up on the East Coast, so I appreciate the direct in your face. Like, here's what I think. I think you're stupid.
Well, he's an interesting guy because he kind of is in like that whole Russell Targ and the quasi-physicist consciousness merging. And I don't know if he's an actual scientist or physicist or what his specific qualifications are, but he's
an actual physicist.
Is he?
He's an actual physicist. Yeah, he's got a PhD from the University of California at, I think, Santa Barbara.
So he's a legit guy.
He's definitely legit. Yeah. But he's in that orbit, so take that for what it is. Anyway, one last question, and then we went way off
2 hours. Yeah.
Well, this interview, I mean, we probably did a little over an hour for this particular interview, even though we were talking for 2 hours or an hour before that.
Well, it's an hour on the recording.
Yeah. Anyway, so last question, just going back to the Vegas case.
Sure.
Any other high strangeness that you heard of from the family, aside from the Bible pages spinning and the crucifix falling off the wall?
Well, I think that the only thing, there is high strangeness involved in the case, not necessarily from the family, but even from observers of the case itself. I don't want to say I've personally experienced anything paranormal, but
you're not going to hitchhiker effect.
Yeah, I think that there has definitely been some impact on. I've definitely had an impact. I'll tell you one thing right now. I have come closer to my personal faith and my personal relationship with Jesus Christ as a result of my investigation in this case. I don't know what these beings are or where they're from or what they want, but I know it's not something I want to give any more to from the standpoint of my focus, because I feel like you can get drawn in unwittingly to give these things maybe more attention than they deserve. And I think that we need to stay in our center of power, stay in our center of agency of what we truly believe, what we feel like we believe, right? Everybody has their own truth that they go to. That happens to be mine. And this case has brought me closer to that consciousness level that I want to vibrate in, which is Christ, and help guide me away from, self-deception, self-importance. And I think that's something that I've struggled with as a part of this case is, I'm beating the drum so hard on trying to get the word out. And I've had some bravado out there too. I've made bets. I did this. I kind of pounded my chest on some things. And I have to constantly remind myself not to deceive myself and not to make myself as more important than I am, because we're all just regular people trying to do our job. And I just want to leave it at that. But this case has definitely brought me closer to who I want to be and reminds me of who I don't want to be.
Scott, I think I couldn't think of a better way to end the episode. So thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure, Sean. My pleasure.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and you can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much, and keep watching. I really appreciate it.